April quarantines don't bring Mayflowers, but instead an arsenal of new tools to benefit your practice. Hello to everyone. I am Sarah Ramaya, Curriculum Designer at ASRM. Welcome to this webinar on the new SART data tools. Please join me in welcoming my colleagues, Jessica Goldstein, and today's moderator, Kelly Jefferson, coordinator of SART. Before we begin, please note, all attendees will be muted except the presenters. Time at the end of the presentation will be reserved for questions. Please type a question in the question chat window at any time. We will read as many selected questions as possible to the presenters during the allotted question and answer time. A recording of this webinar will be archived on the ASRM website in the coming weeks. Please watch your email for notification. I will now turn the presentation over to Kelly to introduce today's speakers.
Thank you, Sarah. I would like to now introduce Dr. Valerie Baker.
Dr. Valerie Baker is the Director of the Division of Reproductive Endocrinology and Infertility and the Telin-Dwalik Professor of Gynecology and Obstetrics at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. She received her medical degree from Harvard Medical School and a master's degree in public policy from the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. She completed her residency in obstetrics and gynecology and fellowship in reproductive endocrinology and infertility at the University of California, San Francisco. Dr. Baker is president-elect of SART and has served as the chair of the SART Research Committee. Dr. Baker, you may begin.
Today, I'm happy to have the opportunity to talk to you about the SART's New Patient Predictor tool. The SART New Patient Predictor tool is going to be or is already available on the website, and they're basically patients would have two choices when they would be looking to use this tool. They could look at their live birth rate pre-treatment when they've had no IVF cycle yet, or after they've had their first cycle, and if it was not successful, they can use the information about the number of eggs retrieved to help to predict their success in the next cycle. One key point is that this new predictor tool predicts the live birth rate for a completed cycle. And a completed cycle is defined as all fresh and frozen embryo transfers that are associated with one intended oocyte retrieval. This is a key difference from a prior predictor tool on the SART website. It will also predict the cumulative live birth rate for up to 3 retrievals. And it was developed using linked cycle data from SART cores in the years 2014 to 16. Its scope currently is really focused on heterosexual couples using autologous eggs and sperm, where we had the most data. It includes variables that are available in SART cores that have the strongest predictive value for live birth rate, and also variables which patients would be likely to know, because the intent is really that this is for patients to use. And this particular model focuses on patient characteristics and doesn't require the patient to enter parameters for treatment, such as the number of embryos transferred. The patient would log on to the SART website and then click the button IVF Success. And then if you look down there, they would find the part that says Predict My Success. And so this is designed to be patient-friendly. After clicking the Predict My Success button, they would be taken to this screen. You'll note that this was a model developed in conjunction with investigators at the University of Aberdeen, who had also published a similar model. They would then choose one of these two buttons, either the Learn More or the Get Started. And if they press the Go on the Get Started, they would get a screen that looks like this, and they would be able to start filling in information. And so, for example, this particular patient clicked in that she's 37. She put in her height and weight, and then she also had to answer the question, do you have polycystic ovaries or polycystic ovarian syndrome? If she knows her AMH level, she can put it in there. If her partner has any problem with the sperm, if she has unexplained infertility, and then if she's ever had a full-born baby at term, and if she has any of the listed problems with her uterus. Then she would click the button Calculate Results and then get the next screen. And on there she would see on her first cycle, and this is fresh and frozen transfers that may result from one egg retrieval, she would have a 54% of live birth rate. If she didn't get pregnant, she would be among the group of patients that would be doing a second cycle, And then her cumulative live birth rate over 2 cycles would be the 74%, and then up to the 3rd cycle. You can note that there's a disclaimer on the bottom there, and basically that disclaimer is really pointing the patient back to you as her doctor. This new model provides realistic expectations for women over 40 who are using autologous eggs. So for example, if the patient was 44, relatively similar to our last patient, but now her AMH level is 0.2, and she doesn't really have unexplained infertility because she has diminished ovarian reserve. So if that patient entered the data here and hit the calculate results button, she would get to the next screen. And you can see there her cumulative live birth rate from her first retrieval would be about 2.5%. And even after 3 cycles, still having a low ultimate live birth rate, unfortunately, as we all know. This model can also be used if a patient's first cycle does not lead to a live birth. And so she would enter in her data again, similar to what she did before. But now you see there's one more question there: how many eggs were collected from your first IVF cycle? And she would put in a value there. So I chose 12 eggs for this patient. And so assuming now, of course, that her first cycle had a 0% success rate, it did not lead to a live birth. Her next cycle, fresh and frozen transfers, would lead to a 30% live birth rate. And if she was one of the 2/3 of patients that didn't get pregnant, our cumulative live birth rate after the 3rd cycle would be about 50%. So in summary, the SART's new patient predictor tool is available free of charge for patients to use on the SART website. We think that it's relatively easy for patients to use, and it has been vetted by patient focus groups. It calculates the cumulative live birth rate with a complete cycle, which is really considering both the fresh and frozen embryo transfers that would be associated with 1 intended egg retrieval. And it allows patients who've had one unsuccessful complete cycle to calculate their success with subsequent attempts. It was developed and validated using data from SART Core, so a large data set with a sample size to increase accuracy. And it's really looked at as a guide to use in counseling patients, or for your patients to get some rough idea of their potential success, but it really refers the patient back to you to get more specific information. And now I'll turn it back to Kelly to introduce the next speaker.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. Now let's hear from Dr. Kevin Duty. Dr. Duty founded the Center for Assisted Reproduction and is the administrator of the CARE Ambulatory Surgery Center. He is a clinical professor in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical School. He has served as president of SART and the chair of the SART Registry Committee, and is a member of the ASRM COVID-19 Task Force. Dr. Duty, you may begin.
Thank you, Kelly. Pleasure to be here. I have no relevant disclosures. My goal here is to give an update on the recent changes made to the National and Clinic SART summary reports. There have been some tweaks in the past, but this has really been the first major set of changes since the large shift about 5 years ago. The purpose of the changes are to make the report more user-friendly, and these changes have been based on member and patient feedback. So the changes that we're going to be discussing today will be the changes related to the filters, the table titles, and our new snapshot report. As a matter of background, it's important to recognize that ART reporting is quite complicated. And this is due to the multiple ways that we can look at live birth success. Success, obviously, is a live birth. That's what the patients come for. But the denominator can be different. We can look at it as the success per patient, the patient undertaking ART as a treatment strategy over multiple treatment cycles. We can look at it per initiated egg retrieval cycle. We can look at it per egg retrieval itself, per transfer, or per transfers related to a single egg retrieval, per frozen embryo transfer, etc. So there are a variety of different ways that this can be viewed. It's also important that our report is not just to look at success, but to look at process metrics and other quality assurance details that are useful. These can be broken down into 2 different categories. One would be cycle characteristics. So for this, we would be looking at things such as the elective single embryo transfer rate, the mean number of embryos that are transferred per attempt, the implantation rate, the percentage of embryos that are transferred back to the uterus that ultimately lead to a clinical pregnancy. And then we can also look at pregnancy characteristics. How many of these treatments result in a positive pregnancy test? How many result in a pregnancy that's viewable on ultrasound? How many of these actually wind up going to term? And all of these can be useful. The report is also quite complicated due to the multiple types of treatment processes that our patients undergo. So from a clinical standpoint, we can use natural cycles. We can stimulate with oral agents, do what we would call minimal stimulation treatments. We can do in vitro maturation of immature eggs, or we can do the conventional stimulations with gonadotropins. Additionally, we can do fresh transfers. We can freeze all the eggs or all the embryos. We can do a combination of all of the above. And there are a variety of different laboratory strategies that we can employ, including pre-implantation genetic testing, ICSI, intravaginal culture, in vitro maturation. And each of these different treatments and techniques can have differences in success outcomes. So it's important that our report be able to deal with all of these. It's also apparent that users of the report want different things. And by users, I'm referring to what might be physicians or patients. So the users can be from different perspectives. And within these groups, some people are kind of big picture folks. That is, they really want the bottom line. The details will really distract and confuse. And other folks are more detail oriented, and providing a lack of detail will serve as a source of frustration. So the strategy of the current report is to provide appropriate descriptive labels for our treatment outcomes. And this has been changed in the new report due to some very good feedback that we've had, both from members and with a focus group that was conducted with the assistance of Resolve. Additionally, we provide detailed hover text to give greater clarity. And this is really important because the table titles have to be quite short, one-liners, but it's important to realize that the actual description of what we're doing in the tables really takes several sentences or even paragraphs. So the hover text helps us with this. When the cursor is placed over the appropriate place in the summary report, a more detailed explanation is given. And this leads us to the two different views that we now have. One is the standard view. This is what you're used to seeing. This is our quite detailed report, and it allows us the ability to view different outcome measures, process metrics, quality assurance metrics, etc. We have both a table representation of success as well as a graphical representation because some people prefer one over the other. And one powerful tool that we have had for the last 5 years are filters that allow us to identify the outcomes of different types of clinical and laboratory treatment strategies. And then finally, we're going to conclude with the new snapshot view, which is a simplified version of our summary report. So with this, I'm going to click on the link here. We can see in the top line, we have 3 different buttons. The first on the very right is the printer icon, and it's important to realize that we've made some changes to allow a very printer-friendly report. The second button is to understand the report, and because the report is complicated owing to the treatments, the complicated treatments that we do, it's important that we provide this detail in a big summary. Now, we don't expect everybody to read that. It's also something that I didn't show in that understand the report is for patients that are really trying to better predict what their chance of pregnancy is. These tables are really not the best way to do that. The patient predictor that Dr. Baker reviewed is really the best way to do that. Also at the top is the snapshot report. I'm going to save that for last. This next line is the filter line, and it shows a button that we can activate to show the filters that we can use. It also has some labels here to the right side that tell us what we're currently viewing with regard to the tables. And if I push the filter button, you can see that we have lots of choices. Instead of viewing all cycle types, I can look at minimal stimulations. I'll keep it this calendar year. We'll keep it all diagnosis. We'll go down and we'll pick intravaginal culture, and we'll apply that filter. And then the report that we see right next to the filter button is the descriptions of what we're actually looking at, what's filtered. And obviously, if we scroll down, we can see that that particular category that I picked, there really nationally weren't that many cycles done, but it gives us an idea as to what those results are. And then I'm going to switch back to reset the filter. That erases everything and gets us back to the original state. One thing that you'll also notice is that this is the 2018 report is the preliminary, and there's more detail about this in the understanding the report, but this is, we have preliminary and final report because our treatment processes often cross calendar years, and the preliminary report is more timely. Moving down, we can see that the title for the first table has been changed to live births per intended egg retrieval, all embryo transfers. So if you can't remember, our prior label was cumulative outcomes per intended egg retrieval. So people are looking at the live birth as being success, and we just highlight that this is cumulative by showing all embryo transfers in parentheses. And if we scroll down, we can see the second table is live births per intended egg retrieval first embryo transfer. And we used to describe this as the primary embryo transfer, but this, I think, provides a little bit more clarity. I'm just going to click and show some of the detail within the report that the standard report shows. So we can see cycle characteristics, such as the percentage of cycles that are that don't wind up with a transfer, the number of retrievals that are done, so we can see the number of cycle starts that don't make it to retrieval. We can look at the mean number of embryos transferred, the percent that were elective single embryo transfer, and then we can look at all types of pregnancy outcomes, including the pregnancy rate per egg retrieval, per cycle start, per transfer, and pregnancy described in all the different fashions of what positive pregnancy test, ultrasound, live birth, etc. And then our final table change title was the third table, which was subsequent frozen embryo transfer. This has been changed to live births per second or later embryo transfer. Obviously, it excludes the first, and it's second, third, or fourth, or it might be 12 months or longer after the egg retrieval and still be the first embryo transfer. So that, I think, concludes with the title changes. I want to move to the snapshot report, which again you get by clicking the top icon. And this report, as you can see, is quite streamlined. The idea is to be able to print this as a single page. It still has the hover text, so it still gives quite a bit of detailed description with regard to what the tables mean, but we no longer have the graphical format or the cycle characteristics, pregnancy characteristics, etc. It really gives us the more bottom line success outcomes. It is important to note that we do this for the 4 autologous tables, but we do not include egg donation within this one-page snapshot report.
Thank you, Dr. Duty. And now let's turn it over to Ethan Wattman. Mr. Wattman is a partner at Redshift Technologies and Chief Executive Officer at Registry Vision. Redshift is a custom software development firm which has built mission-critical digital products and service platforms for organizations, startups, and innovation labs across healthcare, retail, consumer packaged goods, cosmetics, fashion, public sector, and nonprofit organizations. Registry Vision builds systems that store and analyze nutritional, mental, and physical health data. Mr. Wattman helps SART run the SART course registry system and services. Take it away, Ethan.
Thanks, Kelly. I'm excited to show you a new clinic search and directory that we began working on. Just an overview of what we'll show today is the plan to replace the clinic search at SART.org to present a new directory with some new features where data will be coming from the clinic profile information section in SART course. Also some ways to highlight not just what's great about SART and why it's important for patients to choose a SART clinic, but also ways for a clinic to differentiate itself so SART can add value to clinic membership, to present to prospective patients, each clinic's services, your strengths, profiles, and more. The new function is slated to come out in about 6 weeks. So this is what you see now at SART.org. On the left, you'd be able to search by state or zip. On the right is what happens actually below what's on the left now, which is a list of clinics that appear that would match your search, and some additional information if you click the plus sign to the right of the clinic to see more information about each clinic before visiting a clinic's website or the success rates for a clinic. But the information here isn't pulled from SART cores currently. So when clinics update existing profile information, such as address or phone, it's not pulling from SART cores. So there's a limited amount of information being shown here that's not currently stored in SART cores. So what we're going to do is add some information and clinic information in SART cores that will let you present as part of a new directory and your new clinic profile as part of a SART.org SART cores sort of mixed clinic search. We'll have some new fields for additional services we'll get into in a little bit. Patients will be able to find satellite locations. Currently, you can store these if you use the mobile app, but everybody will be able to store their satellite locations, and that'll come up if a patient is looking for a clinic in their area. And all the profile and the service data that are entered in SART cores would be updated on the web in the directory in real time. So this is what it's going to look like for just the regular clinic search. And the goal is to try to keep it relatively simple, modernize it a little bit, but still provide a little more power in terms of how you can search. So you'll be able to search by location using the Google Maps API. We'll link into that. And if you start typing in, if anybody's ever used something like this on any website, you can type in certain pieces of information, it'll autofill. You can pick a location near you. You get some options sort of automatically by clicking into that box. You can search by clinic name or keyword, anything that we store in clinic information in SART cores. So that includes, again, just the clinic name, but again, any keyword, that's any service, any profile information that we'll talk about, pretty much anything. The background photo will rotate out through a set of 20 photos or so, and they'll get randomly selected when you view the page. So it's not something that'll auto-animate to sort of distract you, but ideally it keeps the page fresh, but you know where you are because the overall design is the same. And then we have this little banner at the bottom. Again, we're trying to focus to make sure that patients understand what SART stands for, which is quality and safety, where they click and you can see the pop-up where we maybe have the hashtag Start with SART, great branding that SART's been doing, and make sure that the patient understands just a quick and easy way what they're doing, who they're searching for. These are the best clinics already that they're sort of a subset when they search the directory. And again, this is just an example of another photo that would slide in, so it keeps a little bit fresh. And if you clicked in the location field, you'd be able to have a current location option. And just again, from a Google Apps perspective, because I'm in New York, if I type 16, it's going to give me, and I happen to be at 16 East 34th Street, Google's pretty smart. It knows that, and so it gives me the relevant suggestions, even just typing in a number of the locations that I'm most likely looking to search near. This would be the mobile version of the site. It's not an app, it's a website, but it's responsive, so everything will collapse down into 2 columns. The design where we have it in a more of a landscape view would stack the location and the clinic name boxes, but essentially the overall design is the same. And then the hamburger or context menu up at the top would be where SART's navigation currently is, to move throughout the SART.org website as you're doing search. So once you've found a clinic that you liked or searched with enough information that we could provide a list, this is a sample of the list. And no, you're not crazy. On the left is a map of New York, and on the right are results for Boston. And thank you, Val and Kevin, for pointing that out earlier. And this is just a sample screen. So ideally, when you'd search, this would work according to the Google API correctly. And you'd see the right map on the left and the right clinic list on the right. You could sort by distance. You could sort of set a preferred number of miles that you're looking for. If you hovered over it, there's an expanded menu that I'll show you in a minute, and you can contact the clinic right from here. And we already have a way to contact the clinic directly at the SART on the clinic summary report, and this brings this a little bit earlier in the path. So again, trying to have patients be able to contact clinics directly, SART member clinics, provide that form. They'll be able to fill out a form indicating their name and phone. The clinic can reach back out to them, and they're going to get an email for a contact that they've listed in SART Core's clinic information so that they can follow up, and we can track the leads that we're presenting to SART clinics. And once they click in a little bit, they get sort of a mid-level tier of a little more detail. So now we have the name, we have an address, we have a website. There's a link for full clinic details that they can click to really dig in, and we'll show that in a second. There's a success rates button that they can dig into on the right side that'll open the success rates for that clinic. And after clicking, again, sort of more details to expand. One thing to note here is some new content that you'll be able to, as a clinic, fill in SART cores that will show up on this clinic profile online in real time. One is the overview. That's going to be a text version, a text block that you can customize and write. It has to obviously comply with SART advertising guidelines. The services list that we have here is the same services list, but again, as you make changes in SART cores, that will automatically show up in this profile and be searchable anytime somebody searches. Whoever the providers are, the practice and medical director, and a new set list of specializations. We're just coming up with what those are. It's not a set list yet, but some feedback would be great. On the left side, we actually have a advanced search checkbox that, if you checked, would be able to pick specific services or specializations and kind of narrow down your search if you needed to do that. This is just the mobile versions of the results view. So on the left, we have the default results view, and on the right, sort of example of that advanced search in the mobile version. So again, just everything stacks down, same essential interface. You scroll up and down to get clinics or information on the clinics, whether you're doing it in advanced mode or not. And you can turn on or off the map. And finally, this is the sort of a profile example of what a clinic can put in. And that includes, again, things like the overview, so a block of text that you can use to differentiate your clinic and describe your clinic services, the specific services that are a fixed list that are in SART cores right now. One cool new thing is you'll be able to, for every user account in SART cores, add a headshot, add a title, add a little bio, and that'll appear at SART cores, or excuse me, at the SART.org search. But it's all stuff that you're entering in SART cores, and this is showing up in real time, and you can highlight the staff at your clinic. The additional services piece stays with potentially some additional services that you provide in addition to the specializations list. We keep the links to the contact the clinic up top, and we keep the link to the success rates as well up at the top, along with the map and some details about the clinic.
We will now open up the floor to questions for our panelists. Kelly Jefferson will moderate this session.
Dr. Duty, I have a question for you. Could a clinic link the snapshot CSR view on their website?
Yeah, absolutely. And we would encourage that. That's one of the easiest ways to use it and to be compliant with the SART advertising guidelines.
Dr. Baker, I have a question for you. Is it possible for the patient predictor to be updated on an annual basis?
There are plans to continue to work with that and get updates. And there will also be a publication coming out, being prepared now by some of the developers of the patient predictor model, so that there'll be additional details available. But I think it's a good point, and we do want to keep that updated.
Dr. Duty, I have another question for you. Could you please define in layman's terms the per intended retrieval label?
Yes. So, of course, we went back and back with discussions about that because that does seem a little bit overly complex. And the simplest label would be per egg retrieval. But we wanted to make it very clear that stimulation cycles or treatments that were begun with the intent to do egg retrieval that were canceled prior to egg retrieval would also be included in the denominator. So we really discussed all different types of options like live birth per ovarian stimulation, but that didn't really include everything either because some people would use natural cycles or do in vitro maturation. So this is one of these balancing acts where a really good description would be a paragraph long, and we had to choose something that sounds maybe a little bit cumbersome, but at least seems to be more reflective of what we're actually calculating.
Thank you, Dr. Duty. Is for Ethan. Ethan, is it possible that a clinic could give one of their marketing people access to do all the different things that you showed us on the new clinic search in order to set up all the profiles and whatnot?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can give access only to certain areas for different users. So currently we have things like a research-only user who can apply for research data set. And similarly, you can create a user whose only ability is to create and manage other user accounts. And that way they can create users who have no access necessarily to your data, no access to your clinical data, your patient data, your cycle data, but still have an account where they can link that profile information, including their bio and their image. Great question, thanks.
Thank you, Ethan. I have another question for Dr. Duty. Are the PGT cycles, including mosaicism transfers, are the PGT separated by indications?
So in the current report, the filter doesn't separate them. So as you may be aware, more recently we've been collecting or spelled out the details to collect more granular data with regard to PGT, including mosaicism, et cetera. But the answer is no. Right now, the filter would include all different types of pre-implantation genetic testing, and you can't filter by some of the more detailed things yet.
Thank you, Dr. Duty. Do any of our panelists have any final remarks for our audience?
I would just like to remark that the recent changes are primarily because of our member input and feedback, and that we would encourage everybody to really scrutinize what we've done and give an honest assessment so that it can continue to improve. It's not it's not something static, but we expect it to continue change and improve year to year. And I'm sure Val would say the same about the predictor.
That's right. It's just really wanting to be responsive to what the members find helpful, and if there are things that could be done better, please let us know.
Thank you, Dr. Baker and Dr. Duty. I have one last question for Dr. Duty. What is the point of including the denominator to calculate pregnancy rates or delivery rates cycles that were not completed or canceled? Does that not add more relevant noise per patient?
No, actually, I think the decision making for patients is primarily if I undertake a cycle, what's my chance of having a live birth? So if I understand the question correctly, the question is why would we not just count it per egg retrieval or per transfer or any of the intermediate metrics? So I think that's the one that's of most interest to the patient. And I'll give a second answer, and that's the whole public reporting was initiated in response to the Fertility Clinic and Success Rate and Certification Act of 1992, and that is one of the two defined outcome measures that was required to be collected and reported.
Thank you so much, Dr. Duty, and thank you to all of our panelists. Sarah?
Thank you, Kelly, for moderating the session. Thank you to our panelists for sharing your recommendations and walking us through the tool. To our attendees, thank you for attending and joining us today. You will receive a survey by email after this session. Your feedback helps us give you the most relevant content. Your input is appreciated. Please join us for our next webinar tomorrow on the use of ellipster acetate. For any further questions or comments, please don't hesitate to contact us at webinars@asrm.org. This concludes the webinar. Thank you.